Stephen Squibbs presents this month's board certification tip.
And now for our next segment, our board cert tip of the month, we have the one and only Mr. Grant Gisondo, who recently became board certified, one of the few who passed the test. He's with us today. He runs his own law office in West Palm Beach, now has those three initials after his name, BCS. Grant, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Eddie. How are you?
I am lovely, and I got to thank you for taking your time out of your day today to help our listeners. And there are so many people that take this test, and so few that actually pass it. We love to hear what you guys have to say, and we're interviewing pretty much everybody who took the exam and passed last year. So we're getting some great tips, and of course, we want to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
So there's a lot of criticism about the test, that it's just not a fair test, that it's too hard, not enough people pass every year. Now that you have taken it and you've successfully taken it, is it an unfair test, or do you think it's just a hard test?
I think it's a fair test. It's a very hard test. Hard is an understatement. It's a very hard test, especially in the time that they give you to take it. The time constraints were, I think, one of the biggest obstacles for me. I'm not a very fast typer. I had a ton of anxiety about typing an exam. I even wrote the bar exam when I took it, and that's the last real big test that I took. So the time constraints are really tough. But I find that if you do adequate studying and you memorize what you need to memorize, you eventually get faster. So for example, like if you're going to know the alimony factors, you should be able to bang those out really quick.
And what factors do you think you need committed to memory? Like alimony,
all of them,
relocation?
Yeah.
Everything. Did you
time sharing factors, unequal equitable distribution, everything.
Did you use mnemonics to memorize them, or?
I did. What I did for the factors was I did mnemonics. And then the 3 weeks before I actually took the exam, every morning, I wrote all the factors. And then I was able to, over like the first time, it might take you 20 minutes to get through everything. But then, a week later, you might get it down to 10. And then a week later, 5. And you're not writing every single word of the whole factor. You're just writing the key words to let the person grading know that you recognize that this is a factor. So you can kind of shorthand it a little bit. You don't have to write the whole statute, but I think you have to know all the factors. I mean, I for my responses, I did write all the time sharing factors down.
I think I think it's important to know it all, and then you have to apply it, and that's one step even further into that. And as someone who was on the board cert committee, and I was chair for a little bit, and I got to write the test, narrative answers for these essays bothered me because they were clumsy. They took so much more to read. They had so many additional words. I don't think the people who grade these tests mind if you put things down in lists, and you convey information in a way that may not be, the briefing writing style that you're used to, as long as you demonstrate that not only do you know the stuff, but you know how to use it.
Right.
And don't mess up and use case names, because those don't help you. They will only hurt you if you're wrong. They don't get you any bonus points. But if it's an obvious case, throw it in there because you know it. How many hours do you think you studied?
So the first time I took it, I failed. I had around 500 hours. And I know I can say that affirmatively because the second time around, I kept track of the hours that I was studying. And the second time around, I was somewhat embarrassingly admit that it was at least around 550. So total time for two shots at it was, north of 900 to 1,000 hours, maybe.
And, had you not put in that time, just think you would not have that under your belt. And that makes, even if you don't pass the test, just taking in all this information makes people a better attorney. Going to board cert without the intent to taking the test. I still think that makes you a better attorney. And it's a fun weekend too. Did you, besides, it sounds like you approached this almost like a sporting event, and you had drills and you had a strict timeline that you went by, and you had the experience of not passing the first time. And thank you for sharing that with us. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about their failures in life, but I think it creates who you are. And if you, I think it makes you a much stronger attorney that you got back up on the horse and you were resilient and you did it again and you passed. I know someone who took it 5 times and passed on their 5th time.
I don't
So
think there's anything wrong with taking this exam and being unsuccessful. It's a hard exam. It's a lot of information. I'd rather get up to bat and strike out, at least know I tried.
And chances are you're going to fail the first test anyways. I mean, it's just a numbers game because
Right.
of the passage rate. And if you can't grasp the fact that you may not pass that, you may not grasp, the results you get. And that could be really disappointing for you, especially if you've always been an achiever, because this is probably the hardest thing I've ever taken. And I'm glad I was lucky. I only had to take it once, but I was much younger when I took it and much smarter than I am now.
And review your test if you fail, because when I did review my answers versus what they wanted in that time they let us review it after failing it, it really gave you a lot of insight of what what those test takers were looking for, and the depth of the information they really did want for a good answer.
Now, can I ask you, after you took the first test, did you think you failed it, or did you have questions that maybe you did pass it, or was it clear to you that you didn't pass that year?
I walked out of both tests feeling pretty bad.
All right. So you got good news the second, when you got the letter. That was a happy day for you. Well, there were 2 attorneys last year that looked at their answers, or actually the year before, and challenged it and had a successful challenge all the way up through the BSLE, and overturned the certification committee's denial. So even if you don't pass, you still may have passed, depending on whether or not you want to take that look after you pass. So that's a great idea. You had to go to Tallahassee to do that, or I guess because of COVID, they set up a time for you to see it online, or how did that work?
Yeah, it was over Zoom. They monitored you while you reviewed your test, and you didn't have control of the actual document. You have to tell them like next page, next page, next page. But I jotted down some notes. I was like, wow, I can't believe they wanted me to go there based on that issue. And spotting the issues is just major. But really reading what the answer key looked like when you fail is monumental. I think that made the biggest difference in my studying
for the next year. I got it. So coming back, a couple feet, what advice would you give folks that have never taken this test before that want to pass it?
So I started really early. I would recommend doing that. And when I say early, I started September 1st. That gives you a lot of time, and I committed every weekend until the exam. So from September 1st to the exam, it was every weekend. I would kind of stop my day Friday at noon, and I would turn over to study mode. I'd eat a good lunch, and then Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday would be nothing but studying. And then I took 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks before the exam to do nothing but study. But I treated it like a job. I still came into work at my normal time, and I just studied instead of logging onto my email and working. I studied, and then I caught up on emails kind of in the evening. So starting early, I think, is huge, because you have to get through a lot of information. And then when you're going through the information, certain portions of it are going to stick out, like, wow, I really need to memorize this. Like I would say chances are you're going to get an equitable distribution question somewhere. And somewhere in there, you're going to get an unequal equitable distribution issue. So you kind of have to know those factors. The alimony statute factors, they're not huge. You could probably memorize them in a day. Just do it. It's not going to take weeks and weeks and weeks to memorize that. And then you kind of build on it, just like a house. This week I'm going to memorize this. This week I'm going to memorize this. And you slowly, ramp up. So before the exam, the last week, you're really kind of in tune with what you know.
And you hear some test takers go so far as to like look at who's on the board cert committee and pull their appellate cases. Did you think that that was necessary at all?
I heard that. The first time around, I did read a few cases. The second time around, I did not. I don't think that the people who are drafting the exam are going to write an essay directly off of a gigantic appeal that they had, in the same year. I think it's kind of a dead giveaway. But with that being said, if a monumental case comes out that
That's going to be
changes
tested.
something, I mean, that's like prime, I
Right.
wish for that. And also, changes to the statutes. The first time I took it, like, I think there was a change to the military statute. You got to know that stuff. Those updates and changes is right. You might not see it in an essay, but a short answer or multiple choice, it's likely to come up.
So what did you rely on for your study materials?
I used primarily the red books. From the red books, I deduced them to outlines that I made my own. You can probably find outlines if you really look for it, but making the outlines really made the big difference. And then I took from the outlines, I put it on flashcards. I hand wrote flashcards. And then I would do the flashcards, as much as possible,
So-
try to commit as much as you can to memory.
Were the people in your life going crazy testing you? They know more about some of these factors than some of these other attorneys walking around after they helped you pass. That's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
The other thing that I did that I think made a big difference was that I wrote openings. So if I got an ED question, I didn't have to think in my head, what is the first thing I'm going to write? Because staring at a white screen is very intimidating. So I said, like, okay, ED, I'm going to start out with pursuant to 61075. Or if I know I'm going to get an alimony, I'm going to say, alimony is this, so I'm already in my head triggered of what I'm going to write. It's just a matter of spotting the issue and then boom, I'm writing this. That way I'm not, fiddling with, oh, how do I want to start this paragraph? Because again, time is not on your side. So it almost has to be like mechanical. You see the issue, you're writing this. You see this issue, you're writing this. And it takes a little bit of that staring at the white screen away, which is nice. And of course, notes, outlines, whatever you do to form, an answer.
And you had the opportunity to take one of the tests during the COVID lockdown and one without. I think the test is probably going to be live this year and they're not going to do the monitoring at home, take your test. Can you just describe the two different experiences real quick?
I would definitely prefer taking it live versus a COVID exam. So I did it in my conference room because I didn't want any background stuff or books or anything. And my conference room is just a white room with a black table in it. But what I didn't know that was so stressful was that I have an automatic light switch. So after 2 minutes of non-movement, the light goes off. So I had to keep doing this in the middle of the test to keep the lights on. And I was so afraid I was going to get flagged for cheating. And you have the camera that's looking at you and you're kind of like, okay, can I look straight? I've never had to take a test being virtually monitored. And it was really stressful for me. I'd rather just a proctor looking at me.
Yeah, I did it old school too. I did my answers blue book. I couldn't type them out when you're there. I don't even know if they have blue books anymore. I passed in 2004, a couple of years ago. But they gave us the opportunity between typing and blue booking it, and I blue booked it just like in law school.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still have blue books in law school?
I've never typed an exam in my life before the board cert exam. Everything I've done was handwritten.
Only law students know what these blue books we speak of are. I've never seen them anywhere else, but I saw them at the board cert exam again. Any last words you want to leave with our viewers, Grant, if they're discouraged or don't want to take this test? What would you say to them to get them off their high knees?
Just take it. Just do it. Just do it. Just take the test. If you fail, you fail. I mean, I give more credit for people that take it and fail, whether you pass it or not. Just do it. It makes you a better lawyer. It makes you a stronger person. Just do it.
Excellent words from our guest of the month, Grant Gisondo. Grant, thank you for your time. Congratulations on being one of the few who have tackled this beast successfully. And I hope you have many more years of successful practice in front of you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this month's edition of Stephen Squibb's Monthly Family Law CLE. We hope to see you again next month. In the meantime, do something that matters. Visit www.eddiestevens.com for more information.